Hello, and welcome to This Song Sucks, the podcast where three musician pals get together and talk about the songs that we hate. I'm Josh Kavanaugh, and I'm joined as always by Hayden. I wonder how low I can tune this guitar, Crawford. Oh!
Give me that which I desire, baby.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay. Getting that spew early. That's good.
Gonna need a lot of this fire water to talk about this atrocity today.
Oh, for sure. And in our third spot today is Bryce, the Golden Retriever Montgomery. How's it going, Bryce?
Hey, here we go now. All right.
Here he goes now chasing balls in the backyard.
Just watch me as I dig a spear.
So what song are we doing today, Bryce?
Let's do some classic 2000 off no album in particular. Metallica. Well, I guess from the hit soundtrack to the hit motion picture film, Mission Impossible 2.
I'm sorry, Josh. I forgot to take Bryce for a walk before we started.
You gotta go dookie there, buddy? We need to take you out?
Yeah. Gotta go dig up a bone.
Yes. As Bryce said, we are doing I Disappear by Metallica from the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack. Not so much myself, but Hayden and Bryce here are, I think, what you might describe as two metalheads. Is that a fair description?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't like to talk about my head, but yeah, I do like metal.
Okay. Metal fans, and particularly Metallica, specifically for the purposes of today's episode. And to that end, we're probably going to get into a little bit of waxing poetic about the band's early material specifically.
You betcha.
And as sort of a counter to that, to make sure you two gentlemen don't get too out of control and go on for too long, I've got another guest here. James Hetfield has actually decided to join us. James, welcome to the show. We were talking earlier, and I heard that you were actually really excited. Is that correct? Yeah. Whoa. Okay. Well, jeez,
that energy. You can't beat that energy.
It sounds like an American flag is what it sounds like.
He's really into it at the moment.
He looks good too.
Before we get started, is there anything we can get you?
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire.
Whoa. Okay.
It sounds like Lars's drums didn't come with him.
Sounds better that way.
Very aggressive, and I have no idea what that is, but so I guess we'll just have to continue on without it.
Hayden, you don't keep fuel in your fridge, do you?
You mean beer?
Fire, whatever he desires.
We can get James a beer for sure.
So what is James doing here?
Like I said, keeping y'all from getting a little too into, or what's a tangent, I guess we should say.
So he means shut up, Hayden and Bryce is what he means.
So this is a shut up button.
Well, yeah. Whenever there's we go on for a little too long about Metallica, he's going to interject and make sure that we stay on track.
Excellent.
I really wish someone had one for him during this period.
I wish they'd have had a button for him and a guillotine for Lars.
Oh man,
too soon?
Yeah, we're going right out of the bat here. Jeez,
far too late.
As opposed to our normal episode where I have a fair amount about the bio. I mean, this is such a huge band, and these guys are going to get into it here. I'm going to just do a quick little hit here on the origins of the band, and then we're just going to knock down the albums here.
I'm going to go take down a fifth of vodka and some cocaine while you do that. I'll be back.
Oh, that sounds about correct for today's episode. I'll give you
Fitting
that.
for the early years, yeah.
So the band formed in late 1981 when drummer Lars Ulrich placed an ad in a Los Angeles newspaper which said, "Drummer looking for other metal musicians to jam with Tigers of Pantang, Diamond Head, and Iron Maiden." So he had a very specific sound he was going for. And apparently a friend of Ulrich in Los Angeles was putting together a compilation of metal bands in the Los Angeles area. And Ulrich asked him, "Hey, can I record a song for the album?" And that actually became the impetus for Ulrich to go out and find people to play with.
Was his buddy taller than 4'11"?
I don't know.
I thought Danish people were known for being tall.
That's a good point. I found a bit about the origins of the band name. I don't know how well known this story is, but I never knew about it. So Lars had another friend who was working on an idea for a fanzine for heavy metal, I guess. And the friend told Lars he was thinking about calling the magazine either Metal Mania or Metallica. So Lars said, why don't you use Metal Mania and I'll take Metallica?
Classic.
I don't think he actually told the guy his reason for wanting him to use Metal Mania. He was just kind of squirreling that one away. Man.
Yeah, just, hey, Metal Mania, that's fucking awesome. You should go with that one. You're not going to use Metallica, right? We
What
go
a
with
little
that.
fuck.
Yeah, there's a lot of fuckery from this guy, as most people well know.
Oh, yeah. He has worse little guy syndrome than I do.
This compilation album was released in 1982. And finally, the first pressing listed the band incorrectly as Metallica with 2 T's, which Lars was not very happy about, as you can imagine.
So that's what really got him going. He was holding that grudge for years and decades, as we'll find, I imagine.
And he took it, he took it out on Napster
Against the small part of music, against the small guy in music.
Yeah, absolutely. So the band released their first demo of just themselves called Power Metal in 1982. James Hetfield, the lead singer and vocalist, apparently he referred to the band's sound during this time as power metal.
Power metal. Interesting.
Whatever that means. I think it was probably to distinguish themselves from like hair metal.
Absolutely was to do that, I would imagine.
So in 1982, they moved the band to San Francisco from Los Angeles in order to get Cliff Burton to join the band, their original bassist. And they've been based in San Francisco.
I always found that odd. I mean, talk about a place that James Hetfield doesn't fit in is San Francisco culture.
Yet somehow he's really well known as being a Bay Area musician. I mean, obviously they moved there so early, and the Bay Area was so prominent in metal in that era in particular.
I just imagine him walking around like a neighborhood with like a bald eagle mask on and an American flag, like draped around himself.
I don't think he was quite there yet. I think this is part of the problem. He didn't even have the bangs cut into his long hair yet. He still was actually kind of cool is probably the wrong word, but
Too young to be political.
Yeah, too young and drunk to be political.
So anyway, the band starts, playing some live shows, opening for other well-known metal acts, and eventually get record attention. They released their first record in 1983 called Kill 'Em All, which I found that originally the name of the album...
Metal Up Your Ass!
Yeah, it was supposed to be Metal Up Your Ass.
Which would have been... so good.
They couldn't find a record label or distributor who would publish it. I mean, now that would probably be easy, but, back in 1983, they're like, what?
I'm glad they went with Kill 'Em All over that. Metal Up Your Ass is way too kitschy for me.
I'm glad bands nowadays, though, are allowed to do things like, I want to hear a song called Dick Fillet.
Yeah.
We'll get to saying Whiskey Bob later. Don't you
I think
worry.
if their first album was called Metal Up Your Ass, they probably could have toured with Steely Dan. That would have made sense, right? So anyway, this album wasn't hugely commercially successful when it first came out. However, it did eventually reach triple platinum, and it actually, I guess it was a re-release, peaked at number 66 on the Billboard 200 in 2016. So it kind of was a thing. I guess after they got big, people sort of went back.
They remastered all of those first 4 records, I think, around 2016. I think Kill 'Em All, Lightning, and Justice for All got a remaster, because Puppets already had one. But
Right.
And in that era when Kill 'Em All originally came out, that was the heyday of these things called cassettes had come out, and people are, just making their own tapes, but bands are just selling these cassettes, and there were, limited runs, obviously, especially for an unknown band that isn't going to get much distribution.
Right. So it was more of a word of mouth thing amongst the underground, quote unquote, metal scene. I think what was originally pushing any success that the album had.
they weren't very good at that time either, though. They released a performance from the Kill 'Em All album release party, I think it was. Like during COVID, they put like a one-time video you could watch like for one day, and it was them at the Kill 'Em All release party in some club, and they sucked.
Yeah, I mean, what I found from their origins playing live, it seemed like it wasn't very long after that Lars cobbled this band together that they weren't together long enough to be tight in any way. So There's probably a lot of shit out there of them just sucking really bad.
And at this era that we're at, the lineup is Lars, James, Cliff on bass, and who's playing lead guitar at this point?
We've already lost Mustaine at this point, right?
Okay,
If Kill 'Em All's out, Mustaine's gone.
Mustaine gets kicked out right before the recording of this.
Got it. So Dave Mustaine of Megadeth is the only person considered to be too much of an alcoholic to be kicked out of Metallica.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, the next album is Ride the Lightning in 1984, just about a year later. It actually peaked at number 100 in 1984 on the Billboard 200 with almost no radio play. So, like, people were buying the album in this sort of, I guess, again, quote-unquote, underground scene with no radio play.
I mean, yeah, this record really took it up several notches for them. It's such a huge leap forward in technical ability for Hetfield in particular. Mm-hmm. I mean, the guitar playing is just stellar. Lars doesn't really, he's still lagging behind like a child trying to keep up with his parents walking in full stride. But, I mean, if you listen to his
as would be his whole life, it seems. Yes. Getting slower and slower.
I have a quick aside here regarding Lars Hayden that might link him with you a little bit. Did you know that both of his parents were professional tennis players, and he almost became a professional tennis player?
Oh, God damn it. Don't you do this to
me. Two short guys playing tennis.
Hayden, you played tennis?
You're going to ruin all my loggerhead cred.
No more lager cred.
Hate to lose that.
Seriously, though, every track on Ride the Lightning is excellent, and I would argue that the title track might be one of the greatest metal songs of all time.
And, I mean, beyond that, just it transcends the genre, which I'll come back to when we get to the next album, but, like, For Whom the Bell Tolls is just... It's a masterpiece of a song.
Yeah,
it
totally.
is not a metal song. It's just a phenomenal piece of music.
Right, it's where you start getting into this territory where, like, one of the things that made Metallica such an important band is, like, not only are they combining in this intense speed and precision and aggression together, but they're also blending these progressive elements with, like, strong songcraft for the first time here. And I think these are some of the things that separate them from their contemporary Slayer at the time, who were just blisteringly fast. Metallica was blisteringly fast in a much different and more, like, controlled kind of way. And Ride the Lightning is the beginning of that kind of phase of their career to me. So,
I guess I was going to go within the context of how much this sold. You were commenting, going back to that comment of surprisingly it sold that much despite having no radio play. But you have this whole culture of people that are into Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth, who are all coming out with their first albums between 82, 83, 84. And so you've got Show No Mercy from Slayer in 83, yep. Which, is blisteringly fast, just knocked people off their asses. And then Metallica comes and puts metal up their ass. But,
Uh-oh. You've been Hetfielded.
I think you just got Hetfield.
You got Hetfielded.
My first of the night.
Yeah, so, I mean, the album reached gold status in 87. So 3 years of sales got them there. 6 times platinum in 2012. And again, its remaster hit 48 on the Billboard 200 in 2016. So it had that radio success, as we said. They're building up, but it wasn't until much later that this album, after people go back and buy it, that commercial sales really went through the roof. So 2 years later, in March of 1986, you get Master of Puppets. Much quicker success, number 29 on the Billboard 200 that year. It reached gold within a year this time. And again, there was virtually no radio play, and there were no music videos. And as of 2003, it was certified 6 times platinum.
Man, it's pretty amazing. I mean, but I think part of that is, like, I know Bryce wants to get this too, but it did totally transcend, like, all genres. This is pretty much hailed as a masterwork by listeners and critics of all ilks. I mean, everybody liked Master of Puppets. It was just too good not to. They were truly at the top of their game here.
Yeah, I mean, that's all that needs to be said. I mean, you could do an entire podcast series about this one particular album if you wanted to.
I would agree with that. It also brings a question to mind, though. This record is so good and achieved so much for them and, like, changed music so, like, just forever afterwards. And it begs the question, is Lars Ulrich the worst famous drummer of all time? I mean, like seriously, like Ringo would play circles around Lars in the studio. He gets so much shit. Like Ringo gets shit on so much. Like, what would Ringo do if he walked up to Lars in the studio? You got too many bass drums, mate. Peace and love.
Well, I have some material later on that kind of speaks to Lars's technical abilities. I don't listen to enough metal to really make that much of a value judgment other than a surface judgment. And, Hayden sends me like crazy metal stuff on a pretty regular basis, particularly highlighting drum stuff. And you listen to that and compare it to listening to a lot of the Metallica stuff this week, it is in a completely different galaxy.
It sounds like a 3-year-old's playing drums in comparison.
Oh yeah, compared to an unknown, no-name drummer from a shit metal band from Portland, the drummer is so much better than Lars. Yeah,
it is partially what it's a weird charm to the Metallica has because of that, because you kind of feel bad for Lars, like at least in the early years when they're still making good records. You're like, oh, he's trying so hard.
And he is able to keep up, and doesn't he have that quote of, he's got so much shit?
Yeah, he's gotten so much shit about it. I can't remember the exact quote, but he said, I'm going to paraphrase, he said something to the degree of, like, there's better drummers than me, but I'm the best at playing with James Hetfield or something like that. And I was like, you know what, you probably are. You still suck ass, though.
And imagine if they had gotten somebody like the drummer from Slayer or one
Dave
of those
Lombardo,
other bands. Yeah, to be in Metallica, think about what it could have been. And within the thrash metal world, there's a, like Slayer versus Metallica thing, and, kind of like a Beatles versus Rolling Stones.
Yep.
And the only, both bands are better than the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, totally. Rolling Stones suck. Wait, what are we doing again? How do we not get Hetfielded right then?
Can we just talk about the Beatles now?
People shit on Lars so much for his drumming, but he is like, him and Hetfield sort of share mostly equal credit on their songwriting.
I know.
I mean, do y'all know much about like the contribution of one over the other?
I will argue, this is just from watching some kind of monster and some random studio clips and just my general intuition about how much of a douchebag they both are, but Lars in particular. I mean, they definitely do a lot of arranging work together, but it seems very clear to me that Hetfield brings all of the riffs written, like all the melodies written, and the general idea, and Lars will certainly assert his opinion as far as the arrangement, but I don't see it as a true partnership at all. The band's all Hetfield.
But it seems like Hetfield just really, unlike everyone else on the planet, really likes Lars, and so keeps him around and wants him to be,
Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire.
Did we get Hetfielded again?
I think Hetfield had something to say about that.
Is he mad?
All right, moving on to September 1988 and Justice for All.
Finally, you get a music video.
Yeah, their fourth studio album. It hits number 6 on the Billboard 200 in 1988, so we got a nice steady uptick there from the last album. It was certified platinum within 9 weeks of its release, so the popularity storm is really starting to bubble up here. The band had its first radio single in early 1989 with One, and One also won, W-O-N, the 1990 Grammy for Best Metal Performance.
Yeah, this is what catapults them into arena territory.
Yeah, for sure. So they have this radio play. One sort of becomes I don't want to call it an underground radio hit, but the fact that you had a song from a metal band at this time playing on the radio and having that music video being so popular was kind of a newish thing. Would that be a correct statement, or am I off on that?
I don't know. I was 1 year old, Josh.
Good point.
I imagine it was a semi-newish thing again. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't even born yet. But
well, people were familiar with metal from hair metal, at this time.
I'm just kidding with you. Yeah, I think as far as like, because One does have a pretty thrashy coda section.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would probably be the first time a riff of that nature got that kind of mass exposure. Yes.
But thematically, it's an anti-war song.
Yeah, it's a ballad for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So anyway, this album is now certified 8 times platinum in 2003. So again, the record sales weren't there initially, but you start with an album that becomes 3 times, then 6 times, then 6 times again, and then 8 times for your first 4 records eventually. So, I mean, obviously that wasn't happening at the time, other than And Justice for All becoming certified platinum within 9 weeks. So this is definitely, like we said, the uptick for this band into the truly massive Metallica, also known as the Black Album in 1991.
The death of a great American band. I didn't even include the Black Album on my notes list over here. It's not even there.
Because load's better.
Shut the fuck up.
The Black Album is what rocketed this band to international superstardom. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 and stayed there at that position for 4 weeks. It sold just shy of 600,000 copies in its first week, and it was certified platinum within 2 weeks. As of 2012, it is certified 16 platinum, which you refer to 10 million as a diamond record. It's not an official certification, I don't think, but it's only like 100 or so albums have ever reached that status in the United States. I mean, it's difficult to understate the massiveness of this album. Depending on what source you look at, the album is number 21 on most albums sold all time in the U.S.
What's directly above it?
I'd have to go look at it, but like the album that tops that chart or that list is the Eagles' greatest hits, I think. Thriller is number 2. Bad is also like 15 or 16.
Oh, damn, really?
Yeah, I mean, so like this is like very rarefied territory to be in this company. It still remains as the number 1 best-selling album in the Nielsen SoundScan era, which officially began in 1991, and it was a new method for tracking how albums got sold. And also, this is a pretty interesting fact I found. The album has never sold less than 1,000 copies a week since its release.
Holy shit.
So nearly, almost as of now, we're recording in April 2021, so nearly 30 years, it has sold at least 1,000 albums a week.
That's crazy.
That is nuts.
That's like getting towards that dark side of the moon type statistic.
Exactly. The album also won Best Metal Performance at the 1992 Grammys. So I don't know how the categories worked, but usually Best Metal Performance is reserved for a single song, but it was just the whole album was the Best Metal Performance that year. I mean, yeah, so again, like, I knew that Metallica, everyone kind of knows Metallica, I think. It's somewhere in the cultural zeitgeist, and even if if the only song you've ever heard is Enter Sandman, or even if you've never heard any song, you recognize someone wearing the Metallica t-shirt, and you kind of have a conception of what that means or what that sounds like. And this album is why. Hayden, you didn't have any notes, but Bryce, do you have anything to say about this one?
I mean, you guys would be Hetfielding me all day if I got to have notes on everything. So
I have another bold take here. I don't think there's ever been a band in the history of music that has been as important to the formation of music as Metallica has, that has fallen off a quality cliff in the way that they have, starting after the Black Album. I don't think you could. I challenge anyone to give me an example of someone who has like put out such quality and gone into such a pasture of deep mired bullshit afterwards.
that's right, listeners. If you want a chance to fight Hayden Crawford to the death, tag pod sucks at
And
pod
probably
sucks.
win.
No, I think you're. I think you're right. The level of fame and enormity and recognition that they have. I mean, they still play sellout, insane arenas all across the world. Still, probably when when Lars is 80, they'll still be doing it.
Oh God, he won't make it to 80. He will though. He'll live forever. He'll live fucking forever. Fucking Danish douchebag.
Well, the Danish douchebag and his compatriots in Metallica, they hit this megastardom and live the high life of a rock star during this time period, touring on this album for 3 years or more. They take a year off just because they're just doing too many drugs, drinking too much. And it takes them another 5 years to release an album, the next of which is Load, from 1996.
The Descent into Trailer Park Butt Rock.
Fuck yeah.
Yes, there is a lot to say about this, but I think I found an article written by a guy named Jeff Harder. He's writing for Vice, commemorating the 20th anniversary of the album. And the article is titled, "Load is the definitive Metallica album because it sucks." So I have a few quotes from this that I think really sums it up.
Oh, please, please.
And then I'll get into the numbers. Quote, "To most, Load is just another terrible album from 1996. 80 minutes of evidence that the most successful of the big four 1980s thrash bands had fully abandoned metal for self-indulgent dad rock. That's mostly true, but it misses an aspect that's only come into focus with 2 decades of hindsight. Load was the first indisputable proof that Metallica has been trolling and alienating its audience all along."
Oh, man.
He continues, "Load is the soundtrack to Growing a Soul Patch thanks to distorted blues riffs and mid-coital bellow of James Hetfield."
Mid-coital bellow?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck me, that's good.
And a final quote, "Load laid bare the band's underlining antagonism toward its audience. Now, admitting to listening to Metallica has come with a caveat. Quote, I like the old stuff. No one celebrates their entire catalog. The album with blood and semen on the cover made sure of that." And for those of you who don't know, the cover art is a mix of cow and blood and semen pressed between plexiglass.
I did not know that.
I didn't either. That's honestly pretty metal. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of badass. I kind of like the record more now.
So going back to the length of the album, starting with the Black Album, the original recorded album length of Load was so long that the band had to cut 30 seconds off the final track in order to fit the whole thing onto a CD. Like, a CD is a long fucking amount of time.
That's inexcusable.
Yeah. The album, however, debuted and spent 4 weeks in a row at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Now, a lot of that, I would argue, is probably due to the fact that it's been 5 years since this album this band put out the hugest album ever, almost. And so fans were champing at the bit, so to say.
Are you sure it's not chomping at the bit?
I did have to correct you earlier, so thanks for decorrecting me, you asshole.
Hey, something else to talk about in regards to Load is this is where we get Lars's snare sound begins its metamorphosis, you know. But instead of like existential dread, it just sounds like a street lunatic banging on a cardboard box. But he's starting his upward trend here towards Saint Anger.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into that for sure. But I'll just give you the last couple of numbers here, and then Bryce, I want to hear from you on Load here. It sold 680,000 copies in its first week of release, which was and still is their biggest debut week of any of their albums. So it actually beat out the Black Album's first week of sales, and it was certified 5 times platinum in 2003. So again, I think the goodwill and popularity of that previous album is what launched the initial sales of this particular album. So, Bryce, do you have any comments about Load you want to add to the discussion?
No, unlike me, I want to keep it moving and stay on focus, stay on track.
Oh, okay. Well,
but it is if I could just interject then, interrupt myself. Can I do that? Do I get Hetfielded? It begins. Yeah. It really begins the phase of just So in addition to the lunatic drumming cardboard, just he can't help himself, but and it just that's where it really kicks in.
His ego is just he's totally lost control of his ego is what's happened by this point.
I think that too, and I think there's a sense. So for those listeners who aren't as familiar with this album,
stay that way.
One of the
turn this podcast off right now.
Do not listen to that album. But one of the criticisms that they got was that they all cut their hair and were like wearing eyeliner in like promotional shots and in music videos. And I would argue that his little ooh yeah is sort of like trying to reclaim the what is seen as a lost sense of masculinity from getting away from the quote unquote metal look. So it might be that he's just trying to assert some sort of guttural bullshit in order to make people take him seriously again.
I mean, they do exude toxic masculinity, but
Absolutely.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah, I doubt that he has the self-awareness to think about something like that. That it's just more of a performative thing.
He just thinks it sounds cool.
Ooh, yeah. So less than, or actually just over a year later, they release Reload. The original intention was actually to do the two records as a single double album because most of it was recorded at the same time. Hetfield in 1997 said, "The two records belong together and they should have came out at the same time."
At a NASCAR event.
I mean, yeah.
But they just weren't done. And then guitarist Kirk Hammett said, "We wanted these albums to be twins. Basically, we just didn't feel like being in the studio long enough to finish all the songs."
Good God, man.
So they were lazy. They couldn't spend an extra... I mean, you'd already made the fans wait 5 years between albums. You couldn't make them wait another 6 months to get your shit together.
You touched on it with the NASCAR music, but it really, Reload has the feel to me of just pandering to a white trash, just this demographic that sure, maybe some of the early metalheads moved into, but just
Men in cut-off jean jackets.
men in cut-off jean jackets who like their cars, or like bros that are fucking like lifting weights in Framingham, Massachusetts. Like it's just
Fucking
like,
women don't understand metal, bro.
So to that point, that same article talking about Load, the Vice article, also had some comments about Reload. So just two this time. The first being, quote, "The key differences between the albums were the raw materials used for the cover art. Load featured a mix of cow's blood and semen. Reload used blood and urine."
sick. Best part of the album.
Specifically talking about what y'all are talking about. Quote, "Stylistically, Reload is about the same as its predecessor. In Fuel, the one-time thrash band who eschewed radio play and wrote lyrics about alienation, mental illness, and the horrors of war, wrote a butt rock song about cars tailor-made for NFL Sundays."
Also, I'd like to point out we have Lars' snare continuing its tonal quest for the holy grail of shitty engineering decisions here. It's like just a little bit pingier than Load. It's getting
yeah.
it's getting there.
We're getting there.
It's like it's rocketing towards a shit-filled sun.
We're starting to get that ping. So, again, basically Reload just consists of songs that were unfinished from the Load sessions.
Let's talk about a couple of the songs on this record. I'm gonna get Hetfielded here, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Okay, go for it.
I listened to it today for the first time since it came. I think since it came out, this is the first time I listened to this record. And I don't know if y'all listen to this, but did you listen to Devil's Dance?
Is it track number 3?
I don't remember which track number it is, but it made me want to contemplate suicide more than Kafka and Camus combined.
I think it's
Getting hit with the French and the Russians.
but no Danish. No Danish.
It was what kind, cheese or chocolate?
Oh, what is bikes? What do they do up there? They bike a lot.
We can't get into pastry talk again, guys.
I'm gonna start.
Also, I want to go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna make a reference to a different episode as well, and take another sip of my milk here that I ordered from the bartender.
I also briefly, before I get Hetfielded, want to talk about Carpe Diem, Baby. Which is maybe the worst thing I've listened to in this entire podcast experience. It makes me feel like I should be punished for listening to it in its entirety. Like I just want to start punching myself in the dick until someone takes me to the hospital for doing that. And I want to explain why, I've got a sample of the lyrics here that I'm going to read. Are we ready for this? Okay, Carpe Diem, Baby from Reload. Draw lead, piss wine, sink teeth, all mine. Stoke fire, break neck, suffer through this, cheat on death. Hug the curve, noose the time, tear the map, and shoot the sign.
Poetry.
So
Pure
metal.
It gets even worse here. So wash your face away with dirt. It don't feel good until it hurts. So take this world and shake it. Come squeeze and suck the day. Come carpe diem, baby. Yeah. suck it. He literally goes, yeah. He goes, yeah, sucker.
That's disgusting.
It's the worst thing I've ever heard. I'm gonna go punch myself in the dick until I'm in trouble.
These guys have got to get me too'd.
Yeah. How has Hetfield not been just like pitchforked in the face?
Yeah. And this album, they also do a sequel to The Unforgiven. They do a sequel to their own song, and it's just like, guys, just can you? I don't know. Just it could be worse, but like,
It's bad.
It's not good. Yeah.
So apparently Hetfield wasn't actually into the recording of this album. I found numerous sources that sort of mention this in different interviews of him. But I think the following quote is instructive of what was going on, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying about Lars not being that great. So Hetfield says, "Where they go is a room that I just don't want to go in. I don't really agree fully on what goes on in there, so I stay away. I'm not really against Pro Tools, but I just think it takes a lot longer, and I think it could be solved by playing better. But it has become something a little too big in this band. I don't think it's that necessary. Some other people in the band do, so I let it be. There are some cool loops and strange sounds you can create through the computer, and you can sit and fuck with that shit all day, but we're not going to have some computer sitting with us on stage. That's for sure."
Maybe the only time I'll agree with this guy in our entire life.
So for those who don't know, Pro Tools is the industry standard for software recording onto a computer. And at the time, it was starting to come out and becoming sophisticated enough to be used as a replacement for recording to tape. And it allows you to just sort of record something, multiple takes, and cut up little bits of it and stitch it together to make it sound good. So it's very obvious that what he's talking about here is that Lars is sitting there in the control room with the editor and the engineer just getting the drums to sound just right, which is
just as shitty as possible.
Which is just fucking nuts to me because the playing on this album and on Load are just, it's so much easier technically
it's
than
rudimentary
metal stuff.
Yeah, and for someone who spends
they had to learn to play that way.
I guess so.
Yeah, Lars probably could not play like a simple beat at a consistent tempo because he had just been doing the fucking just jack-offery of this crazy metalness or whatever.
He was never doing anything. I don't know. He was never really doing that anyway.
I mean, for Kirk to slow down and learn, albeit, yes, very basic and, boring like blues rock solos, was something he probably hadn't done. I don't. He comes from like this Joe Satriani school of just like wailing away.
I think it killed his creativity. Like he never recovered from this phase. His lead guitar playing takes such a dive in this like middle-aged Metallica phase and never recovers.
So you're saying he's just as traumatized by these albums as his?
I would argue that
was?
Kirk Hammett is severely traumatized by being in Metallica.
Reload, again, it debuted at number 1 on Billboard 200. Again, it sold 436 copies in its first week, and it was certified triple platinum in 98. So the sales didn't drop off that much. People still bought this fucking album. So now we come to I Disappear and the Napster case that followed. We'll get into the specifics of the song later, but we'll just talk about how this, I think a lot of people are familiar with the Napster case, at least on a superficial level. But this song that we're talking about today is the impetus for that whole case. As we said earlier, it was released as part of the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack. However, the band discovered that an unmixed demo of the song had been receiving airplay on like radio stations. They traced the source of the leak to the peer-to-peer file sharing service known as Napster. We all know Napster because we were 15, 16 when Napster was around.
And I was definitely downloading that demo.
And just downloading a fuck ton of illegal music and not giving a shit. But
ruining my parents' computers one after the other.
My parents had dial-up. I couldn't get anything off it the way I wanted
well,
to.
you could. You just had to wait an hour and a half for it to download.
Yeah.
And I did.
But
while
the band
masturbating to Britney Spears pictures.
There's no way I'm cutting that. I'm sorry.
Hit him, baby, one more time.
I watched that new Britney Spears documentary recently. Oh, have y'all watched the Britney Spears doc?
Yeah, it's great.
Out? Yeah, it's pretty good. She still got it. Sup, Britney?
That's Pod Sucks at Pod Sucks. Pod Sucks. Not Pogs Suck. That's a different podcast. That's something different.
Wait, is that porn? Is that a porn term?
Anyway, the band discovers that their entire catalog is available for free to download on Napster. So they file a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court in Northern California in July of 2000. So the lawsuit sought a minimum of $10 million in damages, which is at a rate of $100,000 per illegally downloaded song. I think that means that not every time it was downloaded or every copy of it was worth $100,000, but if a song was up there and being traded, they wanted $100,000 per song.
Not a good look, guys.
Not a good look. So the band, what really I think turned people was not so much that it was a bunch of rich guys complaining about not getting their money, but the band, and I had forgotten this fact, they had hired an online consulting firm to monitor Napster, which led to the production of a list of over 330,000 Napster users who were allegedly sharing the band's songs. Metallica demanded that these users be banned from the service. And the source for this, I found the article, and there's no irony in this, I think. The title of the article was Metallica Fingers 335,000 Napster users. So the lawsuit, this is where the real dickery comes in. The lawsuit also named the University of Southern California, Yale, and Indiana University as accountable for allowing students to illegally download music on their networks. I mean, the universities, they had no idea what this shit was. They didn't know what was going on. The kids just had internet access through the college and were using Napster. But so they go after these schools and say, you know, try to hold them liable because of this. It was, like I said, complete fuckery. And then here's even better things. I had forgotten about a lot of this stuff. I mean, this was 20-something years ago. But, you know, it was very high profile because Ulrich was testifying in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee regarding copyright infringement. But there were actually a lot of other artists suing Napster at the time, like Dr. Dre.
Dr. Dre came on it really soon after, but he wasn't as much of a dickhead about it.
Yeah, no one gives a shit about that.
Notice. And his most recent release was a goddamn masterpiece. 2001 had come out in 99, and so people actually enjoyed his music, unlike having just heard Damage Inc., which, to go back to, has the most pandering album cover of all time. You guys are mechanics. Garage Inc. Damage Inc. is a song. Yeah. Garage Inc. You guys are mechanics. Yeah, fuck you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think people probably gave Dr. Dre a little more leeway because they understood that his music was worth protecting.
Yeah.
So anyway, another little tidbit from this is that during the 2000 MTV Music Video Awards, Ulrich appeared in a skit with Marlon Wayans. And you can go find this online and watch it. I recommend anyone do it because it's just so dumb. But in it, Wayans plays a college student who's he's like listening to I Disappear in his dorm room on the computer, and he's downloading it from Napster. And then Ulrich comes in, and after a short discussion, he starts putting Napster logo stickers on all of Wayans' stuff. And the Metallica road crew comes in and starts carting it all off. Like, this is mine. So just stealing all his shit. And, I mean, it's such a dumb premise, but what really kills it is that at the end, Ulrich takes a sticker and slaps it on the behind of Wayans' girlfriend and then walks out of the room with her.
My fucking God.
But to continue on, Ulrich later in the program for the MTV Video Awards, when he got on stage to introduce Blink-182, who was performing, the entire audience booed him.
Yeah.
Man, I love watching him suffer.
So the immediate result of the case was an injunction that forced Napster to search its system and remove all copyrighted songs by Metallica using a filter, which was less than successful. I mean, again, the way these things work is people downloading files directly from someone else's computer. So it's just almost impossible. I mean, you can name like we don't have the technology now where like computers can hear a song and know what it is. So you just name it something else, like anything without Metallica or the actual song title and the file name, and you can probably share it no problem.
I mean, these guys thinking that just because they had 3 phenomenal albums and a 4th good one, that they are somehow geniuses when like experts at the NSA can't figure out how to stop hacks from happening within our country today. It speaks to their level of delusion and thinking that they can control everything and like they know what's going on and what's the best.
Exactly. And it was a new technology at the time. And I think a lot of people were just, especially the recording artists, were scared of the implications. And I think it was just a giant overreaction on the part of Metallica and specifically Ulrich. I really don't think.
I mean, was it really an overreaction considering the state of recorded music today?
I think that's a good point. And a lot of the stuff that I read this week that was kind of a retrospective of this was kind of forgiving to Lars in that, I mean, he was kind of right.
I mean, they handled it very poorly, but they were right. I mean, it was the doom.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the doom of recorded music. I mean,
they just saw what was coming.
Yes. So just moving on here, we'll get into some of these points again, or in more detail.
I'm going to Hetfield button you if you don't hurry the fuck up, Josh. Goddamn nerd.
Hey, you leave him alone, all right? He's a wonderful host and a handsome man.
So anyway,
not the looks matter.
A settlement is reached in 2001 for an undisclosed sum with Metallica. And most people remember this as what killed Napster, but it was actually a different lawsuit between a consortium of record labels. Like 18 record labels got together, sued the service, and they were not able to filter out 18 record labels worth of material, and that's why they had to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2002. But for his part, Ulrich has claimed that the lawsuit wasn't about money, but about the band not having a choice on what material of theirs was available online. But 2 things make me think that's complete bullshit. I mean, they sued for money, $10 million minimum. And the release of their next album, which we'll get into here soon, Saint Anger, it ended up being released a week earlier than they had planned because the label was scared of file sharing services. Napster was gone, but stuff like Kazaa and LimeWire were there. And so there's a quote from Hetfield: "This whole internet thing is scaring us, man. What does that mean to us? Our future, our career, the livelihood of our children? Why are people able to steal things?" Again, your point is probably valid, but you are a multi-gajillionaire. Like, fuck off talking about...
Well, and it just speaks... You're regressive now. Like, obviously, yeah, you're, like, pandering to white trash because you're part of that now. You don't, like...
You're a walking barbed wire tattoo.
Dude, how many people do you think at the Capitol riot in January were listening to Fuel on the way over there?
Oh, my God, it's their favorite song.
No, they don't even know what Fuel is. Those guys listen to Toby Keith.
Anyway, before we talk about I Disappear in more detail, we want to talk about Saint Anger, which is their next album in 2003.
Oh boy, do I ever. You know what? In fact, in honor of that. Oh, yeah.
Recording for this album started in April of 2001, which is about 3 months after their bass player left the band, probably because he fucking hated everybody in the band.
He did not have a good time. He did not have a good time in Metallica. I mean, from day one, he got mixed out of their last great thrash opus completely. His bass is not even on there, and then he's got to be part of the worst part of their career.
3 months after they started recording, Hetfield went into rehab. Recording resumes in 2002, and they finished in 2003. So it took them 2 years to record this album. It was released in June of 2003 and debuted again at number 1 on the Billboard 200. It sold a fuck ton again, 400,000 copies in its first week, and this represents less than a 5% drop from Reload first week, which actually outperforms the recording industry as a whole during that time period, which dropped by 17%. So the whole fucking argument about Napster and peer-to-peer harming sales is specious, and there's no data to support it whatsoever.
No, but it did condition people to start expecting art for free.
Yes, which is definitely not a good thing. I would agree with that.
Which I think was the grander concern there, despite their inability to articulate that.
They were shooting at the wrong target, I think, is really...
Shoot me again, I ain't dead yet. Now, Now, they should have paid people to listen to Saint Anger, honestly.
For those who don't know, the reason is the production.
Yes.
So despite any sort of reach for integrity and artistic merit the band may have accomplished with the record, is that they were intentionally trying to make it sound raw. Like the producer didn't want to mix it, apparently. Which is not, again, having sort of a raw, garagey sound is not necessarily a bad thing. But the thing that is infamous that kills this is the snare drum.
Yes.
The quote is, Ulrich said, "One day I forgot to turn the snare on because I wasn't thinking about this stuff. At the playbacks, I decided I was really liking what I was hearing. It had a different ambiance. It sang back to me in a beautiful way."
Just like the inside of a trash can, baby.
I do encourage listeners to go listen to just really any track off that record. You can just start with the first one.
Yeah, it's immediate.
Oh, it's within 3 seconds of playtime you hear it.
It sounds like he's bashing his drumstick against a metal pipe in your garage.
Well, he's like Doug Funny, banging on a trash can.
That was deep. We're really getting early 90s now.
Drumming on a street light.
One little voice.
It's interesting, like the snare tone was always an issue, but I feel like this record has become somewhat of a cult classic lately. Like a lot of opinions of it have softened in the last year or two. In particular, there's a band that I have to talk about that Bryce and I like called Sanguis Kebab, which is a what genre are they? How do they
down-tuned drug death?
Down-tuned drug death band, yes, that are unabashed fans of the Saint Anger record, and for their most recent release, they copied his snare tone to a T, pretty much.
Oh my god!
Intentionally,
and it works.
It's so
what
funny.
Up, guys in Sanguiscoba? Get at us. That's at Pod Sucks.
Also, and I'll just want to bring up too, this is not the first time someone has tried something like this in music history. Danny Carey and Tool play without his snare on all the time, and it worked perfectly. So it's not like the idea itself is like unacceptable, but the execution in which Lars did is pretty unforgivable.
Apparently, they only spent 10 minutes setting up the mics for the drums. And you listen to it, and there's just this fucking high frequency content that just is grating. It makes it unlistenable. And it was, the thing that really blows me away about it is Lars continues to defend this, but like, how much of a bully asshole do you think he had to be? I mean, you had a new bass player in the band, so he probably didn't want to say anything. And then you had Hetfield and Kirk Hammett. Like, the two of those guys should have said, Lars, absolutely not.
I don't think Kirk's ever said anything in that band, ever.
Probably not.
The only thing he said was when they told him to cut out the guitar solos. He was like, "Man, this is bullshit." And
I'm going surfing, man.
And then just like, give me more money.
Yeah, that's why it took 2 years to record this absolute garbage pile.
If any of our listeners would like to hear the snare tone of the Sanguis Kebab record, they should check out the track Dick Fillet.
Okay, guys, let's get into the song after like 50 minutes.
I gotta go. What are you talking about? What song?
What? Oh, it's over? All right, yeah.
I'm going to go through my stuff real quick, maybe skip over some stuff since we've gone on so long. Number one, the intro is way too fucking long. It's just the same stupid little wow, 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 like dumb wah riff for 16 measures. Nobody needs to hear that shit. Fuck you, Kirk.
This song has the trash can drum. I would say that's the best segue. Is that the trash
but it's
can
actually
drum
produced
really
correctly.
appears there? Okay,
It's you don't notice it as much. So that's actually maybe an instructive thing for the listeners is to go listen to "I Disappear" first, listen for that snare tone, and then go listen to anything on Saint Anger, and you can see exactly what we're talking about. And Hayden has sort of shown that progression, starting with "Load" of him doing that. And
there are actually YouTube, like if you look up YouTube drum covers for anything off Saint Anger, there are a lot of people playing actual trash cans in place of their snare drum.
All right, back to the song. Of the 256 words in the song, 26 of them are just him saying "hey," which is just over 10% of the total. That ratio is not good. And I think I didn't do this, but if you were to look at the actual time period, it's probably like 50% of the actual seconds, because he takes One hey is hey yeah. It's a solid 3 seconds per hey.
Now, is that 3 hays or 1 hay in that one?
Well, I just did a
Josh, do it again for the listeners.
yeah. I just
God,
no. I think that counts as 1 hay. That counts as 1 hay. I think in the lyric.
it does. I've got them pulled up right here. No, actually, they have them separated into 3 hays.
Okay,
yeah,
well,
what does James's notebook show? Does he write commas in between each hay?
he's got his composition folder. It's
I
just
bet
hey.
he fucking does.
He's like hey. Oh, I need one more. Hey.
That's like 3 words, man.
I mean, this isn't the only song he does that in, but it's just especially egregious, and I think probably one of the main reasons we chose to talk about this song.
Because it fucking sucks.
Yeah. Normally when I listen to these songs for the podcast, the first thing I do was just listen to it in the background while I'm like washing dishes or doing like some kind of chore, just kind of not actively listening to it, because I think that's the way a lot of people listen to it. And if something stands out to me as either good or bad, in that scenario, it will, because I'm not fully invested in it. And the first thing I thought when I listened to it was, where was the chorus? The song doesn't really have a chorus. You could argue that will you bury me when I'm gone? Like, you could call that section a chorus, maybe, but to my ear, it sounds more like a pre-chorus that just returns to the main verse riff. So
One
like
long pre-chorus, yeah.
I said it to my father earlier, and he called it a refrain.
Yeah, that might be a good way to put it. I mean, again, there's nothing inherently wrong with the non-chorus song format. I don't want to say that. But in the case of this song, all of the sections are pretty boring. Verse,
it
chorus,
also
bridge.
just serves to build. It's a building point. Like it's got a lot of tension. It's building, and the only thing it's building towards is a riff that you can mouth like you're doing a dog bark. Bow, 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 wow, bow, wow. Like that's all you're building to, bro. Like
Well, we're in the era of nu metal guitar at this point, and so they're trying to stay relevant. And we've seen them do all these different styles on Load and Reload, and they took time, for better or worse, to learn how to play all these different styles. Yet it's executed just so poorly when they're doing it here on I Disappear. And maybe it's even a testament to just how like bad, dated, and just basic the nu metal guitar sound is. No offense to Korn or Hayden to making fun of nu metal.
How about offense? No offense to Korn, but plenty of offense to Hayden.
Actually, you know what? Offense to both. Fuck them both.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up nu metal because real quickly while we're talking about the refrain, pre-chorus, whatever you want to call it, it's Bryce actually is the one that pointed this out to me. I gotta give him credit, but the really high delay affected tremolo, I think it's panned hard right, Josh. Yeah, that is such an obvious pandering to the nu metal audience because of like the soundtrack that it's on, being right next to Limp Bizkit and whatnot. I mean, it's like straight out of the Linkin Park playbook. That tone is.
Yeah, ripped straight from them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, last thing about this pre-chorus refrain thing is, the last time they do that, there's a little bit more energy. Lars is just bashing away on that snare drum on every beat, but it's just too little, too late at that point. Like I've lost interest 4 minutes into the song when that actually happens.
Well, you've also got, all you've got to take you through it are lyrics like, hey, 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 and I went on down. Hey, 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 I went on down, and I went on down that road.
Yeah. Good for you, buddy. You make that journey. We are not going to join you on it.
No, I'm going to disappear off the side of that cliff and die.
Yeah. Can I disappear from listening to this, please?
You won't be able to hang on the way Tom Cruise did when he was climbing it.
Oh, man.
Ooh, no.
Well, he used that Scientology magic to do that. So, so anyway, my last point here, the stereo panning of this song. And we were talking about this earlier, and Hayden has said that, Metallica is sort of known for not having good mixes even throughout their career.
Yeah, it's never been a great sounding band.
But that lead guitar, and they do this all the time, is you have Hetfield pan hard left, Hammett panned hard right. And in general, I think it makes for an off-balance mix, but specifically it makes that knuckle-dragging wah riff just sort of stand out. It's even fucking dumber than it would have been if they had put it in the center of the mix. Like, don't call attention to something that's just fucking garbage right off the bat.
That's what's so annoying about it. Like, for a band that has created some of the most influential riffs of all time, like, this is the laziest thing they have ever done. And
like we know you know how to write a song, guys.
It's like even on Load and Reload, a lot of his riffs behind the horrendous melodies and vocals are like, they're way better than this.
Yeah.
This is by far the worst riff they ever wrote.
The main riff, definitely. And then, again, going on with this sort of unbalanced stereo mix, it's especially bad during the shitty guitar solo after the bridge. I mean, the guitar solo, it's just a single measure of material repeated 3 times with a little variation, and then you do it twice. There is nothing interesting. There is no attempt to make it sound melodic. And the tone of it is just super muddy and washed out, even though it's just in one channel. And then to add to that mediocrity of this solo, in the other channel, Hetfield just yells, "I'm gone."
I know.
Which led me, like, I was wondering, was the intention of adding that? Like, were they thinking, oh yeah, this will add interest and, like, you know, texture and layers to it? Or was Hetfield just like, I got to distract from what's going on in the other channel? Like, I'm going to do something, I'm going to take one for the team here and do something so shitty that Hammett's fucking awful guitar solo is not the focus of garbage here.
God, I wish Hetfield were that selfless. When you watch them do live performances of it, he is so into screaming that while Kirk is playing that shitty solo. Like, he's loving speaking over Kirk doing that.
God damn it. Man, what a fucking loser.
Well, I mean, that's really all I have to say specifically about the song. I mean, Hayden, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, my main problem with this song is that it reminds me that Lars Ulrich is alive. Outside of that, the lyrics, I mean, really make me want to deafen myself with an ice pick, but it reminded me of a story. When I was reading the lyrics to this song, it reminded me of the fact, like, when I was a new metal kid, and, like, listening to Korn and Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park and all that bullshit.
So you mean like last week?
Yeah, like last night, actually. But no, when I was a kid doing that and, like, listening to all this, like, super vulgar music in particular, like Limp Bizkit, my dad never gave a shit about that. He, like, was never, like, concerned, but maybe listened to a bunch of idiots saying fuck all the time. The only time he ever had anything to say about it was when he heard me listen to Battery by Metallica, and which is talking about beating your family to death. And he was like, "Son, are you paying attention to these lyrics?" And I was like, "No." He goes, "All right, cool." And just like, so my point being is, like, how did they get to this point? Like, they may have been, like, offensive or, like, controversial lyrically, with some of the violence in their lyrics in the 80s, but, like, he says "hey" like 40 times. That's it. Like, how did this happen? How did he totally lose his ability to write lyrics?
I mean, you become exceedingly wealthy and have nothing interesting to say.
Yeah. Anyway, I also had a huge problem with the guitar solo as well, because it just sounds like a 13-year-old who just learned Purple Haze.
No shade to 13-year-olds out there cracking away on Purple Haze. You do you.
Actually,
but
total shade to them. Learn something else. Anyway, yeah, the guitar solo is fucking whack. It's so bad. Like, and it furthers my point that, like, he just, like, for a guy who was, like, so creative and, like, interesting in the 80s, like, just totally lost his ability and slid into pentatonic wankery, to throw it back to a term from an earlier episode.
You love that pentatonic wankery, don't you?
I love wankery of all sorts.
Chromatic, pentatonic.
Bryce, why don't you end us here with talking about the specific things that you don't like about this song?
So I'm just going to focus on the video itself, which was just very iconic in that time. We're in the MTV era, as well as Napster and you know, everything that we've talked about. But this video was just, it was played constantly. So this song was rattling around in my brain earlier than I can remember. I remember seeing them play it live on the MTV Movie Awards or Music Awards. I don't remember which one. And Hetfield's up there with that diamond-plated guitar that just is like so stupid looking. Like, you're so metal with your metal guitar.
Fucking cool,
and
bro.
Lars has no shirt on.
I bet he looks great.
With his pierced nipples, his nipple rings hanging out. Like, no shame, no shame to piercings and body modding, but like Lars, also his drum set, I went back and looked at it. He only has a floor tom and no other toms on his kit. It's just a snare that he's kind of using as a tom.
He doesn't really need anything else, to be honest with you. You can't really play him.
He needs a child's drum kit.
My first drum kit.
My is still using it 20 years into their career. And that guitar, though, is so stupid looking. It looks like you have a sewer cover for a guitar, which would be cool if you were in like Tomb Mold or Noose Rot to have a sewer cover. I just very distinctly recall that live performance. And so I had to dive into the music video itself, in which we watched the band in a series of stunt-laden scenes, kind of reminiscent of the movie that the song is from. The very first scene is them playing on top of one of the buttes in Monument Valley in Utah, northern Arizona, and I think it's Three Sisters. The band had to be airlifted by helicopter, dropped on top of this butte, which is a holy site to the Dene people, a place that nobody really gets to go on top of. You can't visit this place without a guide that is a member of the nation that lives there. And these assholes get dropped in by helicopter, stand on top of it, and just like lip sync their shitty song. How colonialist can you get? In the making of the video, which is a real treat for all the listeners. If you have not watched, if you don't remember MTV's making the video, it will take you back. It's like a time capsule. The shit that you see, YouTube has all these making the videos. And so in the making the video, when they're on top of this very, very beautiful site, Lars says, well, we're filming from the top of bumfuck nowhere about it. Like, if they were desecrating a Christian holy site, I'd be so down.
I'd be hella down with that,
but instead of doing this, it's just like, oh, you motherfuckers. So also in that making of the video, James has a phenomenal quote saying, it was really nice to write a song as a single, not for a record, because we could really focus on the lyrics and the music. I'm sorry, Papa Het.
That's what you were focusing on with this one?
How many commas between those hays did you have now?
It was actually umlauts between them. Thanks to Lars.
The semicolons, I think. Oh, these fucking guys. So the music video is just a series of like stunts going on, and Hetfield driving a 67 Camaro through the streets of San Francisco.
What is it with classic cars in this goddamn podcast? We cannot get away from them.
Oh, it's the whole podcast. Well, I would say with Hetfield, it's that he's a fucking redneck. Like you said, he's a walking barbed wire tattoo.
Well, so he's driving this classic car. I actually found something about this because he sold it at an auction afterwards. And the thing that really killed it for me is the guy who wrote "Give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire" is driving a version of that car that's an automatic transmission.
Of course he is. What a fucking loser. I bet he gets a fucking Frappuccino at Starbucks too. You know he does.
To go with his skull neck tattoo that he's got just to try to look hard. And so the video itself is just an abomination, but it's hilarious. It's like so high budget. I think it's very fitting for the film that it's on. The iconic rock climbing scene from Tom Cruise isn't even filmed in Monument Valley because even that sci-fi shithead knows that it's not right to climb in that place. And so he's in Utah, in another place that is okay to be rock climbing. It just pisses me off.
You mean the plethora of beautiful southwestern locations they could have chosen instead of having to have that one?
Yeah.
Instead of having to be right there because like fucking like old westerns were filmed there. It's just it is very frustrating to watch, but also hilarious. Jason Newsted, and this being his last song with the band, his scene is just him getting knocked around by a bunch of guys in suits in San Francisco City Hall. And so when you dig into the YouTube comments section...
are we transitioning?
YouTube comments.
A great number of really, really wise people on the YouTube comments board like to point out the symbolism of Jason getting knocked around by these suits right before leaving the band. They're really into that, and they know how smart they are from that. But some quotes that I did want to say, and I've just got a couple here. I've got a friend of ours.
Give me the hits.
A friend named just EC 9 months ago on the making of. He writes...
to be clear, you're on the making of video comment section.
I'm watching the making of the video I Disappear.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
As opposed to the video itself. He says, I was 15 when this song came out. I like it then, and I still like it today. Great song of a great band. So okay. There's also a lot of people commenting on the other music that is in this making of. We hear a Rage song. We hear Lit. We hear Rob Zombie. We also hear when they are flying in their helicopter. We hear "Can You Take Me Higher?" So I don't know what the Adam Hayden Creed rule is here.
Yeah, I'm getting fucked over on the Creed stuff in this podcast. This is.
All right, Hayden Creedford. All right.
Oh, nice one.
So
Sick burn.
Then as I go to the MTV Live video, which is this thing that I remember, our buddy EC, a month later, he's back. So he's going through I Disappear around this, in this year. So he's having a quarantine.
He's fucking
deep
vibing,
dive.
bro.
Absolutely. So I doubt he's doing it for the same reasons as us, but
No, he's getting a thin blue line tattooed on his bicep while he watches it.
he says it's very good that you said bicep, because his comment is James sang with his heart and balls and then does a bicep flex emoji.
Okay, yeah. So the amount of toxic masculinity on these YouTube comments is out of control from my standpoint as well. Did you have another one you wanted to give us, Bryce?
That's all. I hand it off to you.
It's fucking disgusting old white man central on the official video message board here, man. It's out of control.
This is for the I Disappear video.
Yeah,
right?
This is for the official I Disappear video. So I'm going to give you some examples of just how much these people suck. Jay Stone says, when I was a boy, I looked up to these guys like Marvel superheroes. Right? And this which is lame, but this spurned like a 40 comment section. People like, calling him homosexual or something, all sorts of stuff like that. All sorts of stuff you really don't want to read. I'm not going to get into any of that. But Huggy Bear Johnson has to say in response to Jay Stone, he says, Stone, like the rest of us, Metallica, to be clear, I'm going to read all of the mistakes that are in this. So it's not going to make any sense. All right? Okay. Stone.
Perfect.
Like the rest of us, Metallica and Motley Crue were lifers growing up, hometown, all the others, everything to us. Without them, our little town would have become insane or killed one another. Yup. No, Huggy Bear, that's not because of Metallica, it's because of the biker meth. That is.
Ironically, Motley Crue also had an animated cartoon called Metallagreed right around the same time of the Napster issue.
Yeah, disgusting. I know Bryce brought up when we were talking earlier this week about a lot of the people joking about Dave Mustaine being in the fighter plane in the video.
Shooting at Kirk Hammett.
This one particular person just says, so that's how Dave Mustaine lost his pilot's license. Which was the best one of the Dave Mustaine comments to me.
I like when people call him Dave Mustang.
Here's one more example of the masculinity crisis going on here in this comment section. Alex says, before I saw this video, I didn't aspire to be any type of real man, and I listened to shit like the Backstreet Boys. As soon as I saw James doing his thing, keep in mind, at my young age, I had never seen or heard anything like this. I resolved to be a badass, and metal was my shit. This video literally made me who I am. Like, fuck you, Metallica. You caused this shit. You fucking caused this shit.
Your thin Oakleys and spiky hair is what, like, this guy thinks that's metal? Like, holy shit, you are
This
so
guy thinks
off
he's a
base.
hard-ass Guy Fieri.
The child of James Hetfield and Guy Fieri.
Oh Christ. Okay. And we're gonna stop this with this comment. But oh boy. All right. Ascension USA has to say. So Lars basically commits suicide at the end? ? And in the video, if you watch it, he's got this lame action scene where he's like running from practical effects that seem to be terrifying him because he's a Danish loser. So he's running away from these effects and he leaps out the window. So Lars basically commits suicide at the end? ? And RK says, God, we can only hope.
Takes his little Danish dingus right out that window.
And flattens it on that pavement.
Jesus Christ. We have gone on far too long. I'm going to have to Hetfield this entire fucking episode, probably. But I want to thank Hayden and Bryce for joining us. Bryce is raising his hand like he has something to say. Can you...
May I be called on? I just want to do one takeaway about Metallica, and that is that Metallica, like we talked about, had this spanning career that was they are so important, even though this particular song sucks so much, but they had, and maybe still have, the potential to be one of those things like sports, pro wrestling, pizza, monster trucks that can bridge the divide between the left and the right in this nation. It's like metalhead libtards could hang out with car-loving, flag-fucking conservatives and vibe out on some early Metallica. But they threw it all away in this era of it, and
they had it
have
all,
continued to do
and
so.
they blew it.
Well, why don't we ask James? James, do you think that is an accurate assessment? I've actually, I want to, since we have James here, I got to ask him one other question. James, what does a horse eat? All right, guys.
Oh, they're going to take us down for copyright infringement.
Thank you.
I hope they fucking do.
Thanks so much.
I don't ever want to do this again.
Thank you.
Bryce, it's been an absolute disaster. We'll see you next time.
This sucked. This wasn't good.
This Song Sucks is brought to you by The Alabama Take. Follow us on Instagram at This Song Sucks Pod and on Twitter at SucksPod. You can also find us on the Alabama Take Facebook page. Comments, hate mail, and song suggestions for future shows can be sent to thisSongSucksPod@gmail.com.